And so it was really, really rewarding to see his growth and his team's growth from that, moment of despair all the way to like right now. They're confident, shoulders are back up, and they're like, yeah, we can do better, even better than this. Okay, may the power be with you. So
well, that's a perfect start to our conversation today. So I'd like to welcome everybody to our webinar on transforming your team culture to enable project success. Sounds very much like Joe's start to our conversation today, which is lovely. So I'd like to begin by introducing our speakers. Joe, I'm realizing I don't know how to pronounce your last name. So is
Gopi.
it Gopi? Gopi, okay, great. So Joe is currently serving as a director of manufacturing for Sumitomo Drive Technologies, which is a large multinational company specializing in the manufacturing of speed reducers. Joe earned his BS in mechanical engineering from India and master's in industrial and systems engineering from Virginia Tech. In his 16-year career with Sumitomo, focusing on operational excellence, Joe has donned several hats, including championing lean manufacturing implementation, project and program management for new manufacturing initiatives, leading offshoring and reshoring efforts in manufacturing, developing training for continuous improvement in project management, and a hands-on coaching for shop floor and leadership teams in the art of change management. Joe is passionate about leveraging the confluence of project management and best practices, such as Lean Six Sigma, quick response manufacturing, and digitization. Oh, I can't say that.
It's Friday, that's okay.
Digitalizing, how about that?
Yep.
To build lasting teams that consistently provide high quality product and exceptional customer service. So then I'd like to introduce Susan Beauchamp, offering deep and results-oriented experience in operational excellence, change management, team development, leadership mentoring and growth. Susan has helped clients add over 120 billion to the bottom line with senior leaders and teams in call center and service operations, finance, sales, sourcing, and manufacturing. Her industry experience includes chemical and electrical manufacturing, telecommunications, government agencies, healthcare, and academia. And recently, her expertise in the M&A space has enabled clients to transform and standardize operations while bringing in new organizations to capture value more quickly. And the use of several tools in continuous improvement approaches, as well as project management training for new project managers, has enabled the acquired and the acquiring entities to ramp up to speed and act cross-functionally and grow. So I'd like to kick us off by welcoming our speakers to begin their presentations.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Thanks for the introductions, and I'm going to start. We have a couple of exciting stories to tell, and I'm going to share from my background, which is manufacturing, and then I'll turn it over to Susan about halfway. Okay, so just to preserve bandwidth, when I'm going into my side of the story, I'm gonna stop the video from my side. Okay, so I hope that's all right. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Can you see my screen okay?
We sure can, Joe.
All right, okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So again, good afternoon. And if somebody is watching this later, good morning, good night, whenever you're watching it. So today's discussion is really about how to transform teams in their ability to process through changes. We talked a little bit about some examples, before the webinar started. And this is unpacking the power of teams to adopt certain methodologies and certain transformational philosophies, and then using that to exponentially become better in how they do their work, including normal work as well as more projectized work, which are they specialize in. So where this all started, so this is a good story. I think about a year ago, I signed up for a PMI webinar that Susan was hosting. And it was about the connection between project management and driving operational excellence using Lean Six Sigma. Now, this is something that had always intrigued me with my own personal journey as a Lean Six Sigma practitioner, and also having to kind of figure out project management early on in my career, and then just looking at all those different parallels that exist between that, and it really spoke to me. So I ended up sending Susan a message on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, thank you so much for this webinar, and I'd like to make a connection." And Susan said, "All right, what? I'm accepting the connection, but tell me a little bit more about what really connected there." So we talked, and what we came to find out is that both of us are really passionate about project management, and not only that, also this principle of leveraging Lean Six Sigma methods just outside the boundaries of the traditional manufacturing realms, and using those things to engage employees and how to transform team culture using that. So that conversation ended up with some discussion on, hey, listen, these are really good stories. These are powerful messages. So why don't we take these success stories and share it with the world? So there could be somebody out there that could benefit from this. So that's really what led us to developing this webinar. And we had a discussion about this on the PMI forum, and the outpouring of comments that I saw from that, how it spoke to many others, that was also very rewarding. And also, it cemented the belief where we started with, which is, there's a lot that we can do with some very small ideas like this. So anyway, the purpose of this webinar, it's not to be prescriptive. Like, this is not to say, hey, this is the exact method that we used in my workplace, in Susan's consulting background, and you take these models and apply those exact same rules, and identical results will happen. That's really not the idea here. This is more about the philosophy of it, the general principles, the methods, because more often than not, places are different, people are different, workplaces are different. So this is all to stimulate thought on what were the concepts that were used. And the two stories that we are sharing, even though they have very, very different backgrounds, one is in manufacturing, one is in telecom, but the general principles and the methods that worked are really the same. So that's what we are really trying to unpack here. So going into the material here, so let's think about what are projects, right? So all projects are vehicles of some kind of a change. All right. Now, some are small changes, some could be really, really big changes, but it is to elevate work or condition from today's situation to tomorrow's situation. The work involved in making that change, that's really project work, right? And generally speaking, that kind of a change involves some level of disruption to today's normal as we know it. And another fact of life is that, generally speaking, human beings are creatures of habit, and we are not really hardwired to like change. There are very few people running out there saying, yeah, change my world, rock my world, but on the other hand, you hear a lot of people saying, hey, I like stability, I like things the way it is. So like that. So when you think about that, there is a fundamental problem here, right? So if projects are vehicles of change and human beings are not generally hardwired to want to like it, then if our stakeholders are not engaged in the project, then these projects, no matter how good they are, they don't stand a chance of winning, correct? So here's the $1 million question. When you look around, who do you see? Do you see disengaged stakeholders like this? Look at the facial expression of that little kid in the picture here, right? So do you see stakeholders look like that? Like, oh my gosh, here comes another project. I really want to go hide somewhere. Or do you ever see energized stakeholders? So here's the question. Wouldn't it be great to have a team culture where change is not viewed as a chore, where the people who work with you on these projects, they have an innate desire to win the day, like the picture on the right? They're like, yeah, great. That was an awesome project. I'm so glad we did that. Let's go ahead, see what else we can do. And if that's what we want, then how do we build that team culture? And that's really what this discussion is about. And here's the good news. The good news is that's entirely possible. And those are the two stories that we're going to share today. And here's the first story, okay? This is from manufacturing. What if I told you that a team of skilled craftsmen, they learned how to win the day every day? And they proved how change can be exciting. It's not something to fear, but this is fun. And they created a winning culture. So think about doing the thing that you like doing and you get paid for it, right? That's a culture that ended up with that. And once they got to that point, this team became a hotbed for continuous improvement. And they became one of the most engaged and vocal change agents in their area. That is the self-sustaining mechanism that most people dream of. That is what helps, leadership and project managers feel empowered to go do the next big thing and to help this team elevate their performance even further. So it becomes really an energizing cycle, right? So we're going to tell the story in detail. We'll talk about the basic philosophy. How do you nurture this team culture? And we'll also talk about some specific milestones, some do's and don'ts and all that happen in the story. All right. So I am actually going to use a much lighter topic, a farming or a gardening analogy to kind of help set the stage for this. Okay. So let's take a break from that and look at these two pictures. All right. So if I show you these and ask you, which field will the seeds of change grow best in? Said the one on the left, that looks cultivated, leveled, irrigated, or is that the one on the right? It looks like picture from a desert, uncultivated, very rocky terrain. And of course, this is not a trick question, and most of us will take one look and say, well, duh, Joe, that's the one on the left, right? So here's the next question. What is in that well-maintained field that makes it more receptive to growing those seeds of change? So if you have done any amount of, I don't know, digging, gardening, and I think you will agree with this, when you're trying to grow a plant, the most critical step after germination is what? To establish a strong root system, right? That's the key. If that's not happening, plant ain't growing at all, right? So what are the factors that go into this? So typically, to get that strong root system, you need to start with basic things like soil texture, right? And rocks, or the acidity of the soil, is that right? And different plants need different levels of acidity versus alkalinity, right? Moisture levels, nutrients, how much should be there? What's that ideal condition? So there's a lot of that type of work that goes into creating a strong root system. And once that comes up, right, then you're going to work on managing growth. And here's the thing. There will always be pests. There will always be pests. And there has to be pest management, right? And the plants also, sometimes they kind of want to grow whichever way they want to grow. And most experienced farmers will tell you that, well, these type of plants, I have to prune them, or these other types of plants, I have to trellis them so I can kind of manage the growth. So it's not like going out of control. And then while you're tending to this plant, you also need to have a really good understanding of what looks healthy and what does not look healthy, right? And that is how you're adjusting all the other factors. So as we are managing growth, at some point, this plant will become healthy and it will get to that point of self-sustaining itself, right? Except for some constant feeding, some minor adjustments here and there. And beyond that, this will bear much fruit year after year. And as long as there's good sunlight to complement this, it will continue to grow strongly in that direction. Now, this here is the winning point, right? This is where you don't need to babysit that plant anymore. So taking this analogy and applying it to the workplace and the culture of continuous improvement, to create a culture of continuous improvement, you got to start with a root system of very strong stakeholder engagement. So let's think about it. What goes into laying that foundation? So we need to start with the soil texture, the employee engagement, right? The more the people who are doing the work feel vested in that work and they want to be part of it, and the more they feel appreciated, the more they feel energized by the work, the better things happen, right? So that's it's not a new phenomenon, but sometimes this is very much overlooked. And then there has to be clear goals and expectations. There's going to be quite a bit of coaching and mentoring. And I'm specifically not using the word like a lecturing or teaching. I'm using some personal words there. Coaching and mentoring, they are very personal. That involves not only saying, okay, here you go, take knowledge XYZ and apply it. That also involves knowing the person that you are coaching or mentoring and adapting the knowledge to their abilities, to their circumstances. So it's a little bit more active word there. Okay, I hope you understand the context there. And then there's accountability. Now this is a sort of a buzzword sometimes, and sometimes it also gets a negative connotation. That's why I put a little asterisk in there, because in my experience, accountability is not always about whacking somebody on their head with a rule book saying, hey, you're supposed to do this, you did not do that, therefore you are a bad person. That's not it. Sometimes accountability looks like, hey, you know what, that didn't go well, or but you know what, you tried, you would not have found out. Or yesterday wasn't tough, man, that's okay, let's pick it up, this will always turn out good at the end. So accountability in my experience is somebody who that you trust. They kind of check in on you, make sure that you are going the right way. It's sort of like course correction, gentle course correction. Okay, so this is sort of how you build that initial step, the stakeholder engagement. And then once you have that, then the next step, just like the plant, is managing the growth. So the team growth, right? The growth of the work itself. So just like pests, there will always be problems, no matter how good your product is, or how much effort you have put into creating some ideal situations at the beginning. Things always change, and the world evolves, the market evolves, customers change. So new challenges come in and new problems creep in. So there has to be a need for problem solving tools. And then just like you have to guide the growth of the plant, there has to be continuous leadership and messaging, and there has to be that spirit of continuous improvement that has to be preached and practiced, right? And then you also need good metrics or KPIs that tell you, are we going the right direction or not? And as much as you can make it visual, the more people will understand it. And at some point, again, there will be a takeoff point for the organization, and the organization will start to self-sustain. And that's that self-sustaining point. And the next thing you need to do is to provide your sunlight of a common unifying purpose, right? So what is this common purpose? These are really the goals that you set, the short-term and long-term goals, right? So in daily production environment, this could be things like, hey, let's provide a great customer experience, or achieving, a great cost position, or a phenomenally good lead time. Or in the world of projects, it could be project goals like, let's achieve a great end result with the project. Let's make sure that we hit the scope exactly right, and everything that we wanted to get out of this project, we got it. Or it could be the excitement of, potential future business from this project well done. And sort of that if you build it, there will come philosophy. Okay, so I hope this helps to unpack the basic philosophy here. And with that being said, let me go back to my story. So in this manufacturing environment, what was the main challenge here? And as you can see from the pictures, this happened not in a world of high volume standard widget production. This happened where the variety was really, really high, and the complexity was really, really high. So typically, this happens when, like in our case, the company that we work for is a solutions provider, meaning they're not making same standard parts and putting it on the shelf, and hoping the customer buys it. Everything is made to order. And the company's niche really is helping our customers with non-standard solutions, customized solutions that most other people kind of shy away from providing. So because of that, there's an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is that the customers tend to trust our company really, really at a high level, and there's always repeat business, and in not in exactly the type of product, but in more and more applications. And the downside is that from an operational and manufacturing standpoint, this results in a very high product mix. And I also mentioned complex parts and complex packages. That also means very tight engineering specifications. And the third thing is the human element, which is, varying experience level, right? So I mentioned before, this is mostly, we're talking about not, PMPs or MBAs. These are welders. These are craftsmen. They're really good at their job, welding, machining, CNC programming, maintenance, all of that. But within their chosen career path, there's a wide variety in their experience level. Like some people are 30 to 32-year veterans, and then you have also, people with 5-6 years of experience and everything in between. So if this is not managed properly, what could result is high cost, long lead times. And this was not a case of, hey, we just do this one project and everything becomes perfect, the world becomes good, and then we don't have to worry about that again. This is a case where we had to make many, many changes, and that becomes part of life. And that is exactly the culture of continuous improvement that we're talking of. So this is the stage where we started. So how do you go about this, right? So the first step is, now if this looks very familiar to those of you Six Sigma practitioners, it should. And that is because this is that define, measure, phase, right, in the DMAIC process. And this section was where we spent a lot of time preparing for the change. This is vision casting. Like, okay, what does future look like? What should it look like? And if we don't do anything, what is going to happen? So getting a good understanding of where we are today, what should tomorrow look like? And then how do we know we're going the right way? How do we know that there's progress happening? So establishing those goals, and not just doing that in a vacuum, but this involves a lot of listening, a lot of note taking. Okay, and a couple of key points I want to emphasize on that part of the journey or the discovery process. This, I really believe that we really should know, what are we really, really good at? So I'm showing a couple of pictures here to illustrate that point, right? Are you the draft horse, like the picture on the left? They are very powerful animals, they have certain applications, right? Or are you like the show jumping pony on the right? And the pony does some things that the Belgian horse cannot do, right? And there's nothing wrong in being different, but you really have to know, what are you good at? What is your niche? And in our case, our company Sumitomo, that we make really durable products. These gearboxes run for 20-25 years. So looking at this picture, I would say we're more like the horses on the left, but that was important for us to formulate this journey. The second thing is, we have to know our customers. Who are our customers today? Are they going to be our customers of tomorrow, or could there be another segment of market opening up? And what is important for our customers today? What is most important for our customer of tomorrow? You really have to understand that. And we have to know, what are the customers' expectations from us? What is their happy place? And then how can we meet them there? And then how can we exceed those expectations? So in our case, our customers said, hey, we really love your product and we love working with you guys, but what we need you guys to work on is reducing your lead times. And oh, by the way, while you're doing that, go ahead and increase your variety even more, because we want to go into even more challenging applications and we want you to walk with us. So that's once these type of conversations happen, you're able to establish some long-term goals. And what's the next step there? Now, you have to take those goals and break it down into some bite-sized pieces, right? So a few key things here about goal setting. If it's utopian goals, like, yeah, this long-term goal, we want to accomplish that in its entirety tomorrow, it may not work, okay? And then people, that could be a morale killer. Or if you have too many goals, there could be, your focus could be lost. The scattered attention, is probably going to result. And if you have conflicting goals, that's actually a bad idea to start with. So at that point, you should stop and reevaluate everything. What worked best for us was, we picked about 1 to 3 goals per area and nothing more than that. Along with this, I would like to say this: start with easy wins, because everybody likes to win. Winning will change people who may be sitting on the fence, or maybe on the other side of the fence, wondering if they should come over to the other side, okay? And it also does not happen just by rhetoric or by magic. Be ready to teach, to train, to coach, and to mentor. All right. So next, you have to prepare that team for change. Now, this is about creating that championship team mentality. And for that, you have to publish the goals. Hey, here's the long-term goals, and here is how the staircase that we can climb to get there. And then talk about it. Okay, so there will be questions and answers. There will be questions like, well, gee, if we do this, what could fail? Or, some people, there could be questions that are like, okay, if you do this, then what's going to happen next? General excitement about the future. You have to kind of create that environment. And then clear roles and expectations. So, and they don't need to be very fancy. Actually, on the picture on the right, you see some handwritten notes, some expectations from our welding supervisor to some of his support staff. That's okay, that's enough. The main point is, he was very clear on, if we are to win this game, these are the rules we need to play with. Okay. And for our case, when we looked at, what's the vehicle for improvement, we said, given who we are, given what we do, we thought that a Lean Six Sigma method at a very basic level, like a white belt level, could be the best thing for us. So what we did was we created the time and the space for our team to really understand the working principles. And as I mentioned earlier, people had differing experience levels and educational background. That didn't matter. We reached out and found each person wherever they were, and we coached them up so they all got the same level of understanding, so we can go on this journey together. Okay. And that education happened top to bottom, from the newest person that joined the line yesterday all the way to the maybe the leader of the place that has been there for 10 years. And we also addressed a little bit of perfectionism that sometimes permeates our world, which is, sometimes people with good intentions, they say, okay, let's do all of these things, and then we can go. And we sort of guided them to, how about we start now? So you should be seeing some benefits from it, or sometimes you can learn some things from it. So how about we start now? And in hindsight, that was actually a good thing that we did. Learn and practice now, don't wait. And this training, sometimes we did that in the classroom, like you see in the picture on the left, and sometimes it happened on the fly, on the job. Okay, there was a problem. All right, let's not wait for the next class. Let's go to the whiteboard and let's break it down and see what happened. And as I mentioned earlier, the tools have to be appropriate for the type of work environment and the team. So again, we work with machinists, welders. They work with their hands, and they don't always have a computer right next to them. And so we did not try to computerize everything. There was lots of paper charting, like the OEE chart that we are seeing in the bottom middle. And that works great for our welders or machinists, or simple 5-whys, or learning how to do the fishbone diagram on a paper. That worked great for them. May not work for maybe an office situation. So this is where you have to think of what actually works best in my environment. So I'm going to ask a question here. Where are we at this stage when we think of that, bracing the plant, right? Where are we at this stage? Have we planted anything yet? And the answer is no. We're still working the soil here. So once this stage is set, then now this is the real meat of it, right? This is where the team engagement and the accountability process that drives improvement. This is where the team learns to take their communication to the next level. And for this, we created a real process focus, okay? And we intentionally created an environment of separating the person from the problem. So what I mean by that is, when a problem happens, instead of saying, hey, why did you make that mistake, right? And the person hearing it hears like this: why did you evil person, why did you make that mistake? Even if that's not how you meant it, right? Didn't matter. So instead of that, we rephrase that, and always we made a point to ask, what in the process allowed you to make that error? See, all of a sudden, the villain became the process. So when people are not feeling like, hey, I have to put my defenses up, guess what? Fear is gone, and all of a sudden there's an increased willingness to openly talk about process issues, right? So now nothing is hidden. We're thinking very creatively out of the box, right? And we're thinking of what can be improved. So to complement all of this, we also established a really regimented daily team meeting. And they were looking at two things. One is, hey, this is what we're supposed to do, our goals, and how are we doing? What is our performance today, right? And they're basically answering the question, are we winning the day? Are we winning the day? And then the second part of that is, what problems did we have today? How did the process break or fluctuate today? And how do we fix those things using the tools that we have been taught? So what do we see here? So the picture on the left is machinist is in the middle of a job. He has a problem. and he says, okay, I'm going to record it. And if it's something that I can fix, I'm going to fix it. And I'm going to write that solution there. So it can be discussed later. Or sometimes it's maybe he doesn't have the time to, or maybe he feels like, okay, I think I need more input from others. But at that point, he's going to put his hand up and seek help. And on the right hand, you have the team there talking about the day. Did we win today? And how are our metrics, and what are the problems that happened? What are the solutions that we created, or what are the solutions that need to be created? Now, what are these solutions? These are changes. These are changes, right? And nobody's imposing the changes on the team. The team is creating those changes. They're embracing those good changes. And when you create something, when you're part of that creation process, you tend to use it. You tend to champion it. That is a natural process. So what is the leader's role in all of this? And this, again, in hindsight, is something that we did really right, which is we allowed the leaders to lead. So sometimes leaders are caught in a lot of non-essential things. They may look like they're required or important, but if you look at what is the leader supposed to do, well, leader has to lead. Okay, is this relevant to that for there to support the team on a daily basis, on an hourly basis? And if the answer is no, we were pretty merciless about cutting those out. And then we established an organized method for that, which is a leader standard work. And those cue cards, which turn from red to green as they're going through their day, that really helped them to remain focused on that task, which is employee development. Let me help my team understand what today's challenges are, overcome those challenges. Let me work with them and develop them as individuals and as a team. And then the other part is tracking the results versus the goal, right? Okay, this is what we wanted to do. How are we going? And sharing that and celebrating the wins. So we really emphasize spending time with the team. The like a proverb says, this is not fishing for them. This is teaching them how to fish. So what is the central theme here? Communicate, communicate, and communicate visually. And remember that success is energizing, right? It keeps on building on itself. And after a period of doing this, what happens is now the leader is watching for good habit formations, right? Now, this is the inflection point. Now, this is where it doesn't have to be asked about, hey, what did we do today? Did we fix that problem? Instead of that, the team is coming up saying, hey, by the way, here's an A3 that I wrote. I know we've been having these issues, and I think this is a good idea that'll work. Or, they will come up with their own analysis on which machine needs to be replaced next, or how do we put this weld better the next time, or how do we machine this part and maybe redesign it, the fixturing, so it works better. So this is that inflection point, right? And this is where that team starts to take full ownership. Just like that plant, it self-sustains itself, it's self-motivated. And there are lots and lots of good ideas and changes. So talk about continuous improvement, right? So now what does the leader do? His role changes a little bit more. Now he goes from being a coach to being both a coach and a big cheerleader for that team, right? So next stage is continue to provide that common unifying purpose, continue to emphasize the goals. The messaging is really important. Be consistent in that. Be very, very consistent in that, instead of creating a lot of different tunnels, and then the final bullet point is very important to my heart, which is, allowed to stabilize. So if you get to this point and then we say, oh, by the way, you're growing towards the north, now let's, shift direction and go to the south, it may not work. Give the team some time so they can conquer the new normal, get very familiar with it. And that is the point where your stakeholders are now, they're energized and they are ready for the next round of innovation. So at that point, you set new goals and restart the whole process, the cycle all over again. So this is really what happened. Now, where the rubber meets the road, Did we win the day? Did we accomplish what we set out to do? So here's the good news. We were asked by our customers to work on our lead times. Lead times stabilized. And an additional advantage, our in-house processing costs stabilized despite variety actually increasing. Now, here I do want to point out that, this all happened from like 2019 through, even now. This is still going on. It's a continuous process. So the costs that are shown here are really in-house processing costs. In this time, as you all know, supply chain problems and steel prices, outside influences like that caused outside prices to increase, which really emphasizes why this cost reduction was important in the house. And this is why we were able to really fight off some of the huge price increases that others were putting out to the market. We didn't have to do all of that. Okay. Now, these are great. And equally important is that we have engaged and happy employees. None of the pictures that I'm showing here are models, by the way. These are all real people. Okay. The emotions that you see here are real. And finally, our customers. And when I think of customers, it's not just the outside customer. Our internal customers and our external customers are very happy. And if you think back at the last 2.5 years, this was not an easy task to do. So it is all the more joyful for me to look back at this journey and say, wow, what a ride. Okay. So this was happening in daily work. Now we got the team really into it. So now how does this port over to managing projects, right? So the first step is still the same thing, because we're taking lessons that we learned from our journey and applying it to project management methods, right? So first step is utilizing that DMAIC process, understand who the stakeholders are, what the project should accomplish, what the key project success metrics are. And if any of this is unclear, rules are still the same. Do not start the project. But once they're clear, then you publish the vision, which is, the why. Why are we doing this? What do we gain to get from it, right? All of that generate excitement, educate, and energize the team. And now, we are ready for that spark, right? So once the project starts, going into the execution phase, which is actually where most projects kind of get slowed down or bogged down. So this became a good formula. So I'm going to put it out like that. An engaged team with good problem solving skills in every person and good project management discipline. Put those three things together, what you're going to get is very quick meetings. They're very nimble. You can react fast to things that are changing. And at the end, you have very effective meetings. The purpose of these meetings being to get the project done on scope, on time, and in budget, right? And 2 key points here. We made sure that all the project status was visual. And by visual, I mean really visual. There was no, complicated graphs or terrifying charts or anything like that. Everybody could walk past that board. Like you see our project manager there, he's working on the whiteboard, and he's really adding conversations from that team meeting they're having. And you'll also notice that this is happening in the Gemba, in the process where the work is happening. Okay, so nothing is hidden or forgotten. And we also made sure that the task accountability was also visual. So just to show how that visual thing looks like, we use the generic, I think this is very common for most Japanese companies, the red, yellow, green concept. And this way everybody knew where things were. And we also added that very last one, it says stakeholder confidence. That we thought was really important to address the feelings of the people who are involved in it. We asked the stakeholders, okay, forget the scope and schedule and budget for a moment. Based on how things are progressing, how are you feeling? How confident are you? And that really sometimes unearths some things that normally those conversations may not have come up. Okay, so just want to kind of point that out. Also, that whiteboard became a great tool for our projects. And I'm just showing, some examples of how that kind of branched out. We had rapid problem solving, a dry erase marker, and a whiteboard is a great combination for the people to really illustrate things and talk about what if scenarios and all that. Hey, if this is not really holding well, maybe if you redesign it this way, it's going to work out great. And sometimes we added some metrics because we started with some primary metrics, and you sometimes see this disconnect. Either we think we're doing good based on the key metrics, but maybe not so much. So something is missing. We need to add that, or the other way around, right? So this really helped us to be nimble in capturing the project from a multiple angle or multiple perspectives. And another thing they did was I saw the team use that same whiteboard to scope out the next project. Like, okay, it should do this. Hey, what about this? Yeah, add that to that. And even this was really cool. Even they took it to creating a custom software. And they sort of created that interface. Hey, when the machinist looks here, they should see this, and they should not see this because that has already been removed and calculated by the manufacturing engineer, things like that. So the power of this is phenomenal. And that's really how our journey is going even today. And the last thing I want to say before I turn it over to Susan is, none of this was really a new discovery. I said in the other webinar also, we didn't really write a book about this, like the next hot seller on Amazon or anything. We just took some age-old wisdom, and we took some things that fit us, and we just then applied it. That's really all we did. Okay, so anyway, it has been a great experience, has been a great journey, and Susan has an equally interesting and exciting story to tell. So I'm going to turn it over to Susan.
We do have some questions in the queue. Susan, do you want to wait till the end for the questions?
Let's have Joe answer one question and then I'll start. How about that?
Okay, that sounds great. So for the first question, we have a question. I'll read it out loud. Okay. I think DMAIC or DMAIC is great for managing the process and goals. How did you handle the team dynamics and soft skills on how people interact with each other?
Okay, so the question is, usually when you think of the DMAIC process, it appears rather impersonal. And how do you use that to handle team dynamics of people interacting with each other? So the way I am understanding that question, and please let me know if this is the right interpretation or not, there is always a reason why people do certain things or why they don't want to do certain things. And sometimes projects are created, or work goals are created with some of those unstated expectations. So the DMAIC process, in our experience, has been very good at unearthing those real reasons, including the ones that are very evident, that could be on a scope document, or it could be on a charter for a manufacturing cell. Hey, you guys are supposed to do this. But if you follow that same philosophy, you will also get to understanding some things that are not so obvious. Like, you're supposed to do this, but not this, right? So then once you define that, then you can say, okay, what is the extent of that? You can measure that, and then you can use that for educating the team to say, okay, this now is the parameters that we need to accomplish. The soft skills part, I am really not sure what that that question is supposed to mean, unless I've, my answer already addressed that.
Well, I would add on to that, Joe, that DMAIC really enforces a structured problem-solving approach.
Correct.
Applied by a team. So in order to get a team working effectively together, you do need to have good soft skills, and people will learn that over time. And the way I encourage people to work on their soft skills is by having a weekly meeting and being open to conflict, being open to understanding and listening to different people's perspectives, and understanding the teaming process, where you're going to go through the forming, storming, norming, performing process, and helping people to understand that the soft skills are as important as the hard skills. And you can't just be all technical. You also have to work on the interactions in the team in order to get the most from everybody. And there are ways from a team perspective. A charter is a good example of one. Team norms is another one that you can help people get better at that, because most teams will struggle as they go through that process. But because DMAIC is done by a team and not an individual person, these are skills that people will get better at if they use that approach.
Right. And thanks for bringing that up, Susan. So I actually completely read the question wrong. I thought it was first part feeding into the second part of the question, but now I see that that's actually a different question. So yes, what you said, we had formal training on that. We kind of called it the like a company-wide personal development forum. We had a trainer that come in, and she spent quite a bit of time on developing emotional intelligence. Another thing we did was the Myers-Briggs study. So those sessions really help people to understand, why am I behaving the way I am, and why is this other person behaving the way he or she is? And that helped them to really understand, what, it's not like they want to do something different. It's just the way they're wired, and there's a better way to ask the same question, but in a different manner. So you're right.
And that's actually a good segue into my presentation today, because as I talk about it, this is a team that if they had not worked on this using the DMAIC process, there probably could have been increased conflict, increased difficulty. But just by taking a look at the process and finding out where the process was breaking down instead of the people, it enabled them to work more effectively together. So this is a case study that is taken from a sales process and in the telecommunications industry, totally different from what Joe was sharing, but you'll find the lessons are the same. The first chart that I'm sharing with you is a RACI, a roles and responsibility matrix. And what this is laying out for you, each color is a different function, and it's laying out the number of functions that are involved in this process. And anytime you see a black sticky, that's the systems. And you can see the systems are involved throughout the process, and there are a lot of different ones. The process that we were looking at was the deal management process. The leadership team decided we need to work on this because we have certain people that are overburdened. It's difficult for us to get our deals through, and ultimately we'll be more successful with customers if we can be more transparent and we can be faster and more effective at this deal management process. So the first thing we did was start to interview participants in the process, and this included salespeople and all the different functions. And they said universally, the process is too slow, it's opaque, meaning we don't know where a deal is at many points in the process, and it's manually intensive. It takes us too long. We identified what the process steps were at a high level, and each of these blocks is a different process step, and they're colored according to the function that owned it. Blue was sales, green was finance, orange was sales support. And the process started with a discussion with a customer around the opportunity. And then it was documented in terms of the requirements of that opportunity. Then pricing was developed by the finance team. It was shared with the customer, and then the customer approved it. That was led by sales. Then the contract was signed, again led by sales. That paperwork came in, and then the support team had to develop a package of the paperwork and all the necessary information that would be required to enter that deal into their order management system. They call it IDI. And they said, here were the key problems. They knew what the problems were right away. These people were very experienced. They'd worked in it for a long time. And they said, first of all, there's no integration between our systems and there's no visibility. So we can't track our deals from one step to the next. Pricing takes way too long and it's becoming a bottleneck because everything has to go through a few people. Anytime we prepare something, we get the deal, the contract signed, but now we got to prepare it for order entry. It's manually intensive, it's prone to errors, and we have to take duplicate steps because we have to put the same information in multiple places. All this means it's difficult for people to do business with us, not just our customers, but our partners that are trying to sign deals. And if you have our process and our competitors, it's much more streamlined. Guess who that partner is going to pick? Not us. They also said it's unclear what people's roles and responsibilities are, and this wastes time and causes errors. As an example, when does sales take the lead versus sales support? When do we engage a sales engineer in a deal? And we don't have people that govern the suppliers, so it's not always clear we're picking the right supplier. There's a commissions process that happens at the end of this. And if we don't have this right, people will get the wrong commissions or will be paying the wrong amount. And it's not standard the way we do it today. It's manual and difficult to apply. Finally, contracting process takes too long. These were all complaints that we heard from the entire team. You can see how they might be overwhelmed with all this volume and all these concerns about the process. So the question was, where do we begin? We started with some goals. And first we said, we need to utilize one customer relationship management system or CRM for all deals. And if the deals are in there, they'll be more visible. That's our first step. Second, our goal is to improve our deal acceptance percentage. If it takes too long to get a deal through this process, we're not going to get it accepted. So streamlining it will help that. It will also increase our ability to get revenue sooner and improve our customers' satisfaction. And the way we'll do this is by reducing the number of steps required, eliminating as many of the manual ones as we can, and making it very clear who has what role and responsibility. And our goal of all of this is to increase our total sales funnel. So we want more deals. Not only do we want to be more successful at them, but we want more deals, and we want the deals to be a certain new product. So we want to be able to have visibility into what type of deals are coming in and support those that are of the new product. How do we decide to go about it? We picked a continuous improvement tool called Kaizen. It was perfect for this team. And the reason that it was perfect is that a Kaizen workshop takes a team of the right people, gives them the data they need to solve the problem, and they are able to accomplish something in a week that would otherwise take months and months. And we were actually able to do that and define the future state process. Selecting the right people is key. And in this case, we had to get people that were very important to the organization, and taking them out of that deal management process for a week was a real test of leadership, because their leaders supported them and said, this is important enough that we'll take you out of this so you can focus and get this right. It required an experienced facilitator that had done a Kaizen before, several Kaizens before, and was able to get the best out of the people that were involved. And then the format that we used, this was during COVID, and usually Kaizens are done in person, but we could not. So the question was, can we make this work over a virtual format? The answer was yes, because we had engaged people, we had an experienced facilitator, and we had a problem that everybody wanted to solve. And then finally, the Kaizen was a great tool for our team, and we taught them how to use it effectively, but that wasn't the goal to do a Kaizen. The goal was to improve this process. And the output of the Kaizen was a future state that was defined by this team. And this team, these were the people that did the process every day. So hearkening back to what Joe said, if you've got the people involved that do it every day, they're going to own making it successful. And that's exactly what happened. So over a 4-month period of time, the first thing the team did was gather data, and they documented the as-is process. And you'll see we shared it later during the Kaizen. We also gathered some data around how is it working today. And that helped us to figure out who should be in the Kaizen, who's the core team, and what leadership members needed to be involved in the steering committee. And we involved them, and they made a lot of decisions about who to involve, what the scope should be, what the goals of the objective. and the objective of the effort would be. In November, we actually held the Kaizen, and we shared the as-is process with everybody. And we found, not surprisingly, that nobody knew the entire process before. But by Tuesday of the Kaizen, everybody knew it, and it was fairly obvious what needed to change, and everybody had bought into it and committed to it. We identified some quick hits, some things that we could do to reduce manual steps and automate things, make mistakes much more difficult to make. We interviewed the salespeople and asked them what did they need in order to be able to have more ownership of this process. And then we developed things to answer those needs. And we ran a pilot with the most experienced salespeople who were willing to try something new and give input for the rest of the organization. And we developed what we called a sales toolkit from that, because they helped us understand what needed to change. And then we launched it in the first quarter. Now, here was the catch. This organization actually acquired three more organizations during that first quarter. And those organizations had a different CRM. So the project had to kind of pause for a little bit as the CRM was determined and it was launched universally with everybody. But it was a good thing the work had been done, because as you'll see from the data shortly, we were able to pick up progress and really gain steam with the new entities under our wing and all working together towards the same goal. So the data tells the story of why we needed the culture to change. Because if you look on the right, the team looked at what kind of deals were we dealing with, and they found that the advanced or high-tech deals were only 20% of all the deals that were being managed. They called those the mid and high touch. And those were deals that required either engineering or special pricing. 80% of the deals were what they called low touch, and the sales team should have been able to handle those on their own. But the current state was that only 20% of those deals were being handled by sales. So whereas sales should have been leading, owning 80% of the deals from a pricing and quoting and that whole process perspective, they were only doing 20%. So we knew a culture change had to happen. And for that culture shift to occur, the sales team would have to understand how to do their own deals, put them in the system, use automation and everything in one CRM. No more email, because it had been that deals were handled by email and phone call and sort of, I would call maybe old-fashioned sales processes. So we knew a culture shift had to occur. So the team took this on, agreed that they were going to help make this culture shift happen. And perhaps more importantly, the sales leadership team committed to this change. And they trained the entire organization. They continued to work with them to make sure that the systems were capable of the salespeople self-quoting. And they began to measure what percentage of our quoting are we doing from a sales perspective. Prior to the Kaizen, as I said, it was only 20%. During the first quarter, during that launch period, this jumped to 40%. 40% of all deals were handled by the sales team. And then as you look throughout the year, this chart is showing, if you pay attention on the green part of the bar, which is those deals that the sales team was owning completely without going through a special team, that grew from 40% up to 60% by the fourth quarter. And so significant progress was made by this team. Even with all of the additions, there were actually several more acquisitions occurred in this year. So they brought in new companies, and at the same time, through their focus, they continued to be able to change the culture so that the sales team used more and more of the automated tools, put things in the CRM so they were transparent, and enabled that whole change that they had been targeting to occur, despite all the change going on around them. So what are the lessons from this and also from Joe's project? The first, culture change comes with persistence and commitment. It's not something that happens overnight. And while we would have liked to have taken that percentage from 20% to 80% of all deals being handled by sales, we knew that was going to take time. And with everything else going on, we had to stay focused to persevere. People closest to the work have to lead the improvement. In this example, what had to happen is when the wrong type of deal came through to the specialists had to send it back to the sales team and said, you can work this in your own system and you can take ownership for this, and that's what needs to happen so that we are still available when those hard deals or those more complex deals come through. And that's how the change happened. You have to educate the teams on the continuous improvement methodology. And it might not be the whole basket of continuous improvement, but just that tool that that team needs. In this case, it was Kaizen. And educating the team empowered them to make the change. The leadership has a significant role. They are responsible for educating and supporting coaching of the team. They need to empower the team and tell the team, what you come up with, we will support, and instill confidence. So this sales leadership team, by telling the rest of the organization, this is the new process and we're going to support you in it. What they were doing was instilling confidence in the team that put it together. Very important. When you have all these things together, what Joe, the analogy that he gave was a strong root system to grow a plant. And those elements are a leadership team that supports growth and learning and the people closest to the work solving the problem, educating the people to do that and empowering and hold them accountable. What you'll generate is tons of excitement, better project results, and ultimately much more value for your customers. So try this on yourself. Know that it doesn't happen overnight. These are just 2 case studies, but if you've got these right elements, you will make progress.
Thank you, Susan. I was thinking that maybe we would try something. I'm going to fire a few questions at you, and
Okay.
I'm going to ask that you guys answer in like 30 seconds or less. So this is like a speed round, okay? All right, so I don't know if I can say them that quickly, but let's try it. So this is a question for Joe. Joe, how do you manage the level of risk that you're willing to take on a project? What process would you use?
So in our situations, that could be happening from an initiative coming our way, and then we have a process of analyzing the benefit versus the risk, or the cost versus the benefit method. And there is a quantitative method to that and a qualitative side to that. And it really depends on the type of the project to decide, which of those two we should use, and sometimes a combination. But if we can really get down to knowing the success parameters versus those risk factors, that's really how we have gone about that.
Thank you. All right, great. And one more for you, Joe. Love the whiteboard idea. Just curious if you've always been doing this, or was it a transition to using the whiteboard?
Yeah, so that I think was actually a couple of things. So as you know, our company is a multinational company, so we travel quite a bit. Japan, China, Vietnam, Mexico, Belgium, places like that, where we have other factories. And when we get together with our peers or with some suppliers, there's sometimes a language barrier. And we sort of found out that sketching out ideas sometimes really helps, overcome that. And I guess we kind of started using that in our own environment, and it kind of grew legs from that, and started taking off by itself. So
I wish I had a whiteboard in my home. Okay. So question for Susan. Susan, did the Kaizen lead you through the process that determined that high or low touch, or how did you get to that high or low touch?
Well, when the group looked at the process and they realized that everything was going through a couple of people, there was a huge bottleneck there. They asked themselves, you know what, not everything needs to go through that. How can we differentiate it? And that's how they came up with high, medium, and low.
So the high, medium, low was part of the revelation, part of the Kaizen work.
Yeah, I would say it was problem solving, because they realized we have a bottleneck. How will we handle that? Oh, we don't have to have everything go through the bottleneck. Let's distinguish based on complexity.
Great. Okay, well, that's all we have in terms of questions and answers. And I appreciate the time that both of you have given to this subject. I know I actually learned quite a bit, so I'm very appreciative of that, of the time that you spent. I loved the analogy with the plant and how you guys worked that in. So thanks so much. Any
Thank
parting
you, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Appreciate you moderating it. And again, please, for others, thank you for your time listening to this. And thanks again, Susan, for kind of putting all of this together and guiding it.
You're welcome. Appreciate your time, everyone.
All
Bye,
right.
all.
See you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.